Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajapacharya Ashtotara Shatashi Shrimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories of the assembled devotees, all glories of the assembled devotees, all glories of the assembled devotees, all glories of Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya So this morning we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, entitled Creation of the Fourth Order, Chapter 28, Puranjana becomes a woman in the next life, and we're on text 63. If you could please repeat after me. Yata Purusha Atmanam Ekam Adarsha Chakshusha Dvidyabhutam Viveksheta Tataivantaram Avayo Yata Purusha Atmanam Ekam Adarsha Chakshusha Didyabhutam Aveksheta Tataivantaram Avayoho Yata Purusha Atmanam Ekam Adarsha Chakshusha Vidyabhutam Aveksheta Tataivantaram Avayoho Yata Purusha Atmanam ekam adarsha chakshusho dudyabhutam aviksheta tataivantaram avayoho. Okay, word by word translation. Yata, as Purushaha, the living entity. Atmanam, his body. Ekam, one. Adarsha, in a mirror. Chakshusha, by the eyes. Dvidda abhutam, existing as two. Aviksheta, sees. Tata, similarly. Eva, certainly. Antaram, difference. Abhayo, between ourselves. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. As a person sees the reflection of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies, so in our material condition in which the living entity, which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there is a difference between God and the living entity. Purport. Being affected by the conditioning of matter, Mayavadi philosophers cannot see the difference between the Supreme Lord and the living entity. When the sun is reflected in a pot of water, the sun knows that there is no difference between himself and the reflected sun in the water. Those in ignorance, however, perceive that there are many small suns reflected in each and every pot. As far as the brilliance is concerned, there is brilliance both in the original sun and in the reflections, but the reflections are small, whereas the original sun is very large. Vaishnava philosophers conclude that the living entity is simply a small sample of the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. Qualitatively, God and the living entities are one, but quantitatively, the living entities are small fragments of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord is full, powerful, and opulent. In the previous verse, the Lord says, "My dear friend, you and I are not different." This non-difference refers to qualitative oneness, for it is not necessary for the Paramatma, the Supreme Personality, to remind the conditioned soul that he is not one in quantity. The self-realized soul never thinks that he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in every respect. Although he and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are one in quality, the living entity is prone to forget his spiritual identity, whereas the Supreme Personality never forgets. This is the difference between lipta and alipta. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is eternally alipta, uncontaminated by the external energy. The conditioned soul, however, being in contact with material nature, forgets his real identity. Therefore, when he sees himself in the conditioned state, he identifies himself with the body. For the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, there is no difference between the body and the soul. He is completely soul. He has no material body. Although the Supersoul, Paramatma, and the individual soul are both within the body, the Supersoul is devoid of designation, whereas the conditioned soul is designated by its particular type of body. The Supersoul is called Antaryami, and he is extensive. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 13, text 3. Chetragyam chapi mam vidhi sarva chaitreshu bharata. O sign of Bharat, you should understand that I am also the knower in all bodies. The super soul is present in everyone's body, whereas the individual soul is conditioned in one particular type of body. The individual soul cannot understand what is taking place in another's body, but the super soul knows very well what is happening in all bodies. In other words, the super soul is always present in his full spiritual position, whereas the individual soul is prone to forget himself. Nor is the individual soul present everywhere. Generally, in his conditioned state, the individual soul cannot understand his relationship with the super soul. But sometimes, when he is free from all conditional existence, he can see the real difference between the super soul and himself. When the super soul tells the conditioned soul, "You and I are one and the same," it is to remind the conditioned soul of his spiritual identity as being qualitatively one. In the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, Text 40, it is said, Yatal mukhad vishpulangar dhumad vapi sambhavat apya manvena bimaitar yatagni pritag ulmakat. Fire has different features. There is flame, the sparks, and the smoke. Although these are one in quality, there is still a difference between the fire, the flame, the spark, and the smoke. The living entity becomes conditioned, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead is different because he does not become conditioned at any point. In the Vedas it is stated, Atma tata pritag dashta bhagavan brahmasangitaha. Atma is the individual soul as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the seer of everything. Although both are spirit, there is always a difference. In the Smriti, it is also said, Itagne Chudra Vishpulinga Vyu Charanti. Just as sparks manifest in a large fire, similarly the small individual souls are present in the big spiritual flame. In Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 9, text 4, Lord Krishna says, Mattastani sarvabhutani vichaham tveshavastitaha. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. Although all living beings are resting in him, as small fiery sparks rest on a large flame, both are differently situated. Similarly, in the Vishnu Purana it is said, Ekadesha statasyāgnir jyotshna vishtarini yata parasya brahmana shaktis tatedam akalam jagat. Fire is situated in one place, but it distributes heat and light. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is distributing his energies in different ways. The living entity is but one of these energies, marginal energy. The energy and the energetic are one in one sense, but they are differently situated as energy and the energetic. Similarly, the Satchidananda form confirmed in Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha, is different from that of the living entity in both his conditioned and liberated states. Only atheists consider the living entity and the Supreme Personality of Godhead equal in all respects. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu therefore says, Mayavadi Bhasha Shunale Hoy Sarvanash. If one follows the instructions of Mayavadi philosophers and believes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the individual soul are one, his understanding of real philosophy is forever doomed. Om Jnanitivedandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanvalitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Bhakam Karitavachalam Bangam Langayate Girim Yakripatamaham Vande Shri Gurun Diritaranam Vancha Kapadubhishta Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll read the I'll read the translation again. As a person sees the reflections of his body in a mirror to be one with himself and not different, whereas others actually see two bodies, so in our material condition, in which the living being is affected and yet not affected, there is a difference between God and the living entity. So in the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Kapila Dev's instructions to Devahuti, there's a famous verse describing a sadhu, Tatikshava Karunaka Surida Sarvadehinam. And so it describes a sadhu, a saintly person, is tolerant, merciful, friendly to all living entities, has no enemies, very peaceful, abides by the scriptures, and all his characteristics are sublime. All their characteristics are sublime. So the main, you could say, sadhu that we think of when we read this verse, we think about Srila Prabhupada as having all of these wonderful qualities: tolerant and merciful, friendly to all living entities, no enemies, abides by the scriptures, and his characteristics are sublime, all of them. It says that Vaishnav's tolerant. Now, Vaishnav being tolerant, sometimes Vaishnavs, they display intolerance. Just like it says that if one offends a devotee, if one offends Krishna, then the person should act like fire against that other person. And the example is given to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when Lord Nityananda Prabhu was injured by, Jagai? Madai. Injured by Madai. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu immediately, he rushed there and he pulled out his Sudarshan chakra and he's about to kill Madai for that offense. And you have in the case of like Haridas Thakur, he was there's so many cases which Haridas Thakur was offended. Of course he didn't take offense, but like for example that Brahmin, or that so-called Brahmin, who, because Haridas Thakur was claiming based on scripture that chanting of holy name brings liberation. And this Brahmin was saying, "Oh no, that's not true." And the yes, chanting one name brings liberation. And then the Brahmin said, "No, that's not true." And the Brahmin said, "Well, if that's confirmed, if it's confirmed that that's not true, your statements, then within a few days, Haridas Thakur, your nose is going to fall off, right?" So in other words, he was very critical, very proud, arrogant, critical, offensive towards Haridas Thakur. Now, in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, it says that Haridas Thakur didn't take any offense. He just... But some time passed, and instead of Haridas Thakur's nose, falling off and all this, that Brahman's nose fell off, and says his toes were melting away due to, leprosy. And it explains in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, or Vrindavan Das Thakur explains in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, that Haridas Thakur didn't take offense, but who took offense? Krishna. He said this was a direct reaction given by Krishna to this so-called Brahman. Krishna is intolerant of offenses towards his devotees. But also devotees, they should be intolerant towards offenses towards Krishna or towards other devotees. And we see that, so then we say, okay, well, what does it mean to offend Krishna? Well, there's different ways people could offend Krishna. There's so many offenses in deity worship, for example. Of course, those engaged in deity worship are devotees. But still, devotees could offend Krishna, or they could, seva aparad, it's offense towards the service. Or offending the holy name, for example, right? The 10 offenses, there's 10 offenses towards the holy name. But you could say that a lot of these seva aparad, Vaishnava aparad, and there's so many right? Dhamma aparad and Nam aparad, Dhamma aparad, offense towards holy places. So a lot of these, of course, can be performed by anybody, but a lot of these are in relation to devotees who chant the holy names, engage in deity worship, and so on. But devotees have to be careful. I mean, the Nectar Devotion is written by Srila Rupa Goswami, and it's a law book of devotion, and that's what Srila Prabhupada said. And it's written for our upliftment, for our advancement. And there's all of these rules and regulations in there to gradually rise to higher platforms of Krishna consciousness. And devotees have to be careful that they follow those if they want the result. Just like another thing about Nectar Devotion, that Shilavati, one Prabhupada disciple, early disciple of Srila Prabhupada, she was Pujari there in Los Angeles. She had a realization. She shared it with Srila Prabhupada. She said that, Srila Prabhupada, I was thinking that just as the Krishna book, it represents Krishna. So similarly, I was thinking that the Nectar Devotion represents Srimati Radharani. And Srila Prabhupada said, that's a very nice realization. So he appreciated that. But here within this particular verse and purport, it's specifically the purport, long purport here, it's talking about Mayavad. Mayavadis and Mayavad philosophy. And at the end, Prabhupada says, if one follows the instruction of the Mayavadi philosophers and believes that the Supreme Personality of Godhead and an individual soul are one, his understanding of real philosophy is forever doomed. So, Srila Prabhupada, he was very tolerant, most tolerant, but when it came to dealing with impersonalism, dealing with impersonalists, dealing with Mayavadis, who by definition are offenders, Mayavadi, Krishna aparadi, they're offenders of Krishna, because they equate the soul, themselves, and others, with Krishna, means we're all God. And practically, of course, there's so many, you could say, flavors of this strange philosophy out there, but they practically are completely discounting Krishna's existence. Like, they say that, Krishna is, ultimately, he's Brahman, spirit, right? There's no form. And this Brahman, spirit, comes into this material world, right? And takes on a form, but ultimately it's formless. Krishna's formless. So, and Srila Prabhupada penning his own pranam mantra that we chant every day, he's saying that his mission is to destroy this impersonalism in the Western, voidism and impersonalism in the Western world. Now, of course, nowadays, the influence of the Western world, it's all over the world. Everybody wants to be like America. it seems, a lot of the countries and people. Which is interesting. It's kind of a love-hate relationship, because a lot of times they hate Americans too. They think they're so stupid and foolish. Even Americans hate Americans sometimes. But we don't see that in America or throughout the world there's a lot of philosophical discussions going on about, God and the living entity is one, just like in traditional Vedic times or something, like these big philosophers, Shankaracharya and all these others. They actually had a philosophy. They wrote books, and it was a serious thing. But nowadays it's not like that. But still, Mayavad is going on. And it goes on in the scientific world. You could say the materialistic, hedonistic, atheistic, scientific world. Which, that's why Srila Prabhupada set up the BI, the Bhaktivedanta Institute, to combat these materialistic scientists. And now it's not for the scientists out there. It's not that every scientist is atheistic or whatever. But largely the scientific modern, or you say postmodern scientific world, it's atheistic. And it's reducing life. Yeah, there's no God, there's no creator, and so on. Which Srila Prabhupada, he mentions here that, which by definition atheists, because atheists means they don't accept the existence of God, they don't accept the existence of Krishna. So the Mayavadis are also equated to be atheists. They don't accept the existence of Krishna. So in Mayavadism, it brings one just as, like traditional Mayavadism, the ideas and so on, because it is, of course, it says by the 10th canto, the demigods praying to Krishna in the womb, says that by great endeavor one could rise to the right Brahmajyoti, but again they fall down because they're seeking that relationships and so on. But people's attempts to engage in, you could say, traditional Mayavadism just leads to hedonism, materialism, because without engagement in the senses, for example, as Dravida Prabhu was mentioning the other day, there's so many things in Krishna consciousness. He was just mentioning the arti, which is full engagement for the senses. You're singing, dancing, smelling the incense, right? Touching the fire, seeing the beautiful deities. So there's a lot of engagement for the senses. Afterwards, taking prasadam. I thought about that, but I didn't say it. Taking prasadam, food offered to the deity. So this is, real spiritual engagement for the senses. And for people who don't have that, it's difficult, practically impossible to really control the mind, control the senses, and make spiritual. You can't do it. So the Mayavadism, it says, okay, we're all the souls. They all become. There's no variety, which means that the ultimate goal, there's no variety. Now, we're all just one. Now, this is a problem because it makes the material world seem more attractive than the actual goal that these people are propounding. That, okay, well, the goal is you just become, everybody's just one, and you're just in this light or something, but there's no variety there. And then, so it makes this world look more attractive because there's so much variety here. Sunsets and this and that, and people, relationships, and eating, sleeping, mating, defending. Oh, very, very attractive. In comparison to no variety, that's what people think. And also the goal to attain that. The process to attain that goal is also miserable. So therefore people don't do it. And if they say they're doing it, it's like, like also was being mentioned the other day that, Prabhupada, he spoke on the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita in Los Angeles. And he was saying how, these people, they go to the yoga studios and so on, or meditating or something, and, they meditate and they're sleeping, or they're going to smoke a cigarette after, take a cigarette break, they go to a local meditation place and take a cigarette break. Now, of course, people have problems with cigarettes and this and that, but Prabhupada's making the point that it's a farce. Means there has to be very serious control of the mind and senses if one wants to make progress in yoga, meditation. So within the modern scientific world, within the universities, within the scientific world, within modern culture, music, so on, it's all trying to more or less banish God and promote materialism. So it's it's problematic. Now, Srila Prabhupada, he had to deal with this sometimes in his disciples. So it's not that those, specifically I'm speaking about his early disciples, they came to Krishna consciousness, but they still had some of these impersonal ideas. No, this isn't new. This is, by the way, it's today is Makara Sankranti, which I heard last night. I haven't heard anywhere else, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. I heard from His Holiness Radhanath Swami last night that we were talking on the phone. We're close. I'm just joking. he was giving a Zoom talk, and he was saying that this is the day that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left home to take sannyas, and it's also the time period where Bhishma Dev got darshan of Krishna. And it is the day that the Juhu temple, Radharas Bihari in Mumbai, it was opened this day, 43rd anniversary. And for that anniversary, His Holiness Giriraj Swami, he just released his book. I'll build you a temple, the Juhu story. I talked to devotees in Los Angeles, and they said that book will arrive in Los Angeles at the end of this month. It's coming on boat. But they released it in Juhu yesterday, or today, yes. And it's there, and they offered to the deities, Srila Prabhupada, and devotees were, book table and everything, so it's nice. So disciples would sometimes have some impersonal leaning. Just like we had one Bhakti here. He's still a devotee, actually. It's good. But we were talking to him about Krishna book. And then he said, "Oh, do you really believe that?" He said, "Do you really believe, like Krishna and this and that?" And he was really it was really bewildering his mind because he had these impersonal ideas. He was a bhakta, he's becoming a devotee, chanting rounds and coming to the Krishna lounge. And even after joining the temple, he was here for some time, he still was having difficulty. But he's still a devotee, and it's good. But one particular, you could say, famous example of this is from the Hare Krishna explosion by Hayagriva Prabhu, the birth of Krishna consciousness in America. It's a case in which Srila Prabhupada has given a talk, and so I'll just read that here. Let's see. Yeah. So Prabhupada says, another popular concept rekindled. Well, Hayagriva is right. Another popular concept rekindled by psychedelics is the belief that man is already God, but simply hasn't realized it. the we are God generation. Period. Then Prabhupada says, returning to Krishna does not mean becoming Krishna, Swamiji tells us. When a son returns home to his father, he doesn't become his father. Distinct identities are always there. We may become the father of Krishna like Vasudeva or Nanda Maharaj, but we can never be equal to him. We will always be subordinate parts and parcels. But Swamiji particularly criticizes the Radha Krishnan commentary to the Bhagavad-Gita, verse 934, in which Krishna tells Arjuna, engage your mind always in thinking of me, offer obeisances and worship me, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. Upon this verse, Radha Krishnan comments that it is not to the personal Krishna that we have to surrender, but to the unborn, beginningless, eternal, who speaks through Krishna. Just see, Swamiji says, when this verse and commentary are read at the evening class. I told you Dr. Radhakrishnan was an impersonalist. This Mayavadi philosophy is worse than atheism. We are not really certain what Mayavadi means. When asked, Swamiji says that impersonalists are called Mayavadis because they consider Krishna's transcendental eternal body to be Maya or illusion. For them, he says, the impersonal Brahman is the absolute truth and Krishna is subordinate to Brahman. But in Gita, Krishna says that he is the supreme absolute truth and that the impersonal Brahman is subordinate to him. Surprising us all, Keith rallies to the defense of Dr. Radhakrishnan. Can you believe that? Prabhupada's giving the talk and then Bhakti Keith starts defending him. I think he's right, he says. After all, Krishna is in all of us, so if we surrender to the unborn within us, then we attain the absolute truth. To support his view, Keith quotes Shankar and Huang Po, Buddha and Christ, Spinoza and St. Paul. Swamiji just sits on his dais, and for the first time I notice him turn red. This is surprising considering his golden complexion. When Keith pauses, Swamiji asks, "Are you finished?" Keith isn't finished. He talks on about the self and the one mind, quoting liberally from various scriptures before winding down. "Are you finished?" Swamiji asks again. "Yes," Keith says. So you have to understand, then Prabhupada speaks, so you have to understand what we have been saying, that Krishna is God. "Yes," Keith says. "And that worship is due God." "Yes," Keith says. Suddenly Swamiji, red and furious, begins to stand up. Prabhupada stands up on the dais. "Then why do you want to take it away from Krishna?" he roars, shaking the small storefront. "It's Krishna! It's Krishna!" He slams his hand down on the lectern. "It's not unborn within Krishna, it's Krishna." We all sit stunned, as if a lion had pounced on the dais. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is directed telling Arjuna, "To me, worship me." And Dr. Radhakrishnan says that it is not to the person Krishna, but to some void. Just see what a nonsense rascal. Do you want to worship some unborn void instead of Krishna? Krishna is the absolute truth. His body, mind, and self are absolute. And he says, think of me, be devoted to me, worship me. And even Shankar says, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, worship Govinda, worship Govinda, worship Govinda. Your nonsense will not save you at death, and yet this rascal wants to take it away from Krishna. Do you want to follow such a rascal? Krishna says, worship me. Do you understand? Then why are you saying it is not to Krishna? Why? Why not to Krishna? We all look at Keith as if he'd suddenly turned into an untouchable. This surprises us all, since usually he is so expert. Yet he simply articulated the Mayavadi mentality of us all. We sat in stunned silence, not daring to venture further. Did you see how red Swamiji got? I asked Wally afterwards. Boy, was he angry. But he's right, Wally says. All the commentators try to avoid Krishna. You've read Bhagavad-Gita before. Until meeting Swamiji, did you ever think of worshipping Krishna? I have to admit that it never crossed my mind. Thus we discovered that we are also Mayavadi impersonalists, addicted to inactivity and hedonism. We know nothing of spiritual personality in action. Swamiji has to shout loud indeed to make us understand that God is a person, and that action for his sake is on the spiritual platform. This is Bhagavad-Gita's most essential message, Swamiji says the next morning. Lord Krishna tells Arjuna to fight, but he says, do it for me. When we work for Krishna and chant his name, we are already liberated and living on the spiritual plane. Just as a person feels heat when he touches something hot, you are liberated as soon as you enter into the service of Krishna. We all feel as though we've just touched something very hot. There's no doubt that our long slumber is being disturbed. We are declaring war, Swamiji says, war on Maya. It's nice. So many wonderful book. Hare Krishna Explosion. So many wonderful books. Prabhupada. Pastimes. So, yeah, so war on illusion, war on Maya, trying to bring Mayavad down, along with other things. So, does anybody have any questions or comments? Where are all the devotees? Anyways. Well,
Hare
devotees are here.
Can you hear me? Should I turn it up? Is this all right, or is it enough volume on this?
I think it's okay.
Just an addendum to that pastime, not so well known. I'm trying to remember where I read this recently. That when Prabhupada was in India, of course there's a lot of times he was in India, but somehow or other he was invited or went to see Dr. Radhakrishna. You read about this?
Oh, yeah. That's in Chasing Rhinos.
What is it?
That's in Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, I believe, yeah.
Oh, that's what it is. That's where I read it. Do you want to tell that story?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, what I'm remembering is that Prabhupada, he goes to visit Dr. Radhakrishna, I think it's in South India. And Prabhupada's, he's preaching to him, Krishna consciousness, but somehow Dr. Radhakrishna, he couldn't speak. Oh, he was on his deathbed, huh? Yeah, he was invalid, couldn't speak, and something that, Prabhupada was still kind of, yeah. Hey, you want to say something about
that? Prabhupada was courteous to him, but there was a little, standoffish because of this whole thing. But then at the end, Dr. Radhakrishna, he took Prabhupada's hand or something and said, please pray to your Krishna for me.
Oh, okay, I didn't
It
know
was
that.
like he's thrown away this crazy philosophy.
That's nice. There's one with, anyways, there's this quite a well-known fellow. We won't say his name right now, but quite a well-known fellow. And his philosophy was, he's like a so-called Swami or Guru or something. But his philosophy was pretty much, he had some meditation, some yoga, this and that, but his philosophy, just burn out your senses as much as possible and eventually become detached. So they brought this up to Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada said, oh, well, that must mean that the pig is the greatest sannyasi, because, pigs are just... but anyways, Prabhupada, some of these, when Prabhupada was in India, some of the ladies were coming to complain to Srila Prabhupada. They were married ladies. They're complaining to Srila Prabhupada that our husbands are going off to this fellow's ashram and, engaging in illicit sexual... no, the ladies were pious, Hindu ladies, and their husbands were going off to this guy's ashram and, committing illicit sexual activity and all that, So they're complaining to Prabhupada, oh, what do we do, Srila Prabhupada? And, they're suffering. And they don't want to divorce their husband or anything. So what do we do, Srila Prabhupada? So then Srila Prabhupada said, don't worry. This was in Pune. He had one of his main ashrams there. He said, ashrams. So Prabhupada said, don't worry. I'll go there personally and I'll drive him out. So Prabhupada told the ladies that. They said, okay, thank you. Now, fast forward, Prabhupada, he's preaching in the world, living his life. And then he he leaves the world in 1977, right? But then Prabhupada actually never made it to Pune. So, but then what happened is devotees are gone all over. So they went to Pune, which is not so far from Mumbai. They went to Pune, and they're setting up a preaching center and big Rath Yatra and everything. And then this fellow was still there. So what happened is the news reporters that like to get juicy stories. So they heard that the Hare Krishna was kind of critical towards this guy, this so-called yogi, and then this guy was also critical towards them. So the news reporters going back and forth. Oh, what do you think about so and so? What do you think about the Hare Krishnas? And they're going back and forth. Then this fellow, kind of bogus yogi fellow, he said that he started criticizing Prabhupada quite heavily and the Hare Krishna movement and just really like getting nasty, I mean, he was always he was getting really nasty. So then some time passed, and shortly after that he got this horrible disease. His skin was burning, a hard time speaking, something like this, really bad disease, and he actually left Pune. So Prabhupada's prediction was fulfilled. I will go there personally, I'll drive him out. So Prabhupada went there in the form of his devotees, and by their interaction and all that, the devotees set up shop, and then he was gone. So anyways, that was one thing I heard. I heard that from my spiritual master. Does anybody have any other comments or questions? All right. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes.